All right, welcome to another live edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, your boy Pat Lane here with Matt St. Jean. Matt, we are approaching the end of preseason football. It feels pretty good.
I'm ready for the regular season. I'm ready for the end of speculation for us to talk about something where wins and losses actually matter.
Right, exactly. Yes. 100%. And honestly, like, just get me to the regular season at this point. There's been so much, and we'll talk about, some of the stuff that's going on. We'll talk about kind of what's going on, but
Mhm.
but man, it is rough. So we're going to go through, just to give you guys a little breakdown of the episode. We're going to do a little positional battles, okay? And then we're going to do a little preview of Friday night's game. We still don't know if starters are playing in Friday night's game or not, but we'll do a little bit of a preview there, and then we'll kind of go from there. Now, before we do that, though, Matt doesn't know I'm going to do this, but before we do that, though, make a little announcement, a little Patriot Nation announcement, a little Pat's Pulpit announcement. Matt is officially staying on as the official co-host of the Patriot Nation podcast. So this is it. These are the two guys right here, Pat Lane, Matt. It's gonna be dope.
I'm
So
excited. Yeah, this is
welcome to the
this is the
club, man.
first roster battle right here. I made the 53.
That's it. See, made the roster. So it's great.
Just
So
waiting for the game checks to start coming in.
man, those are nice. You know what I mean? Those are nice. I can't
Very
say
excited to
it's
be
not
here.
it's not as big as PMT, get paid 75 grand an episode, but we do okay. We do
I'll
okay.
take 75
So
cents.
yeah, I know, right? But anyways, so that's that. So I wanted to let everyone know that before we get started today. But well deserved, and it was fun. It's of course I had two great hosts. Started off with Spags, he was awesome, and then of course bring in Keegan, and he was fantastic. And the three of us kind of were going all year last year, and that was great. And then Keegan, of course, goes to Nesson. Spags is at CLNS now and doing some other things. And so there was an opening. Matt jumped in. Already knew him from the Sco Show. Mark Schofield hooking it
Yeah.
up, and
Yeah,
and so it worked out. You know.
Yeah, I got to give the shout out over there to Mark Schofield. I would not be here without having DM'd him one random day in the summer in like 2018 to ask to join the Slack channel over there.
Yep. It's good stuff. So, but anyways, all right. Let's get into positional battles. Let's talk about some Patriots football here. And man, there's some good ones. The first one, I'm going to start on the easy end, and I guess we can
Okay.
kind of maybe we'll do offense and then we'll go to defense. Right. I'm going to
Works
start on
for
the
me.
easy one, and we're going to go Devin Asiasi versus Lil John Humphrey. I feel like Lil John is so much more fun than Lil Jordan, but Lil Jordan Humphrey, uh, I mean, I don't see how this one's even close, to be completely honest with you. And I know Humphrey can be wide receiver, tight end. We're not really sure, but like, who the hell wants to keep Devin Asiasi on this team? Period. Certainly not over
Right.
Lil Jordan Humphrey, who has done some really really nice things in the preseason and has been open pretty much all camp.
Yeah, and I mean, especially now with Tyquan Thornton being injured, and
Hmm.
he's going to land on the 53 and then immediately get put on IR, which means there's kind of one extra spot from what we were talking about the last time we're looking at stuff. Humphrey's outplayed Asiasi. Like you said, he's got receiver and tight end versatility. He's probably a better blocker, which is insane to say.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, Humphrey has been in the NFL before. Asiasi has not really been an NFL player at this point. He hasn't proved that, which means only one of these guys has a chance to get through to the practice squad, probably.
Right.
Um, if you even want to put Asiasi there. I don't think Humphrey is getting through. So this is a pretty easy battle, unless something changes. Unless Asiasi goes for 200 yards and a pair of touchdowns tomorrow night.
Right.
This is Humphrey's battle.
It's a good point. It's a good point. So, yeah, I agree. And Matt mentioned this. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about this a little bit, but about who makes the initial 53 man, because as people have pointed out, right, and as people have talked about, and we'll talk about this because I think this is important as well.
Mhm.
The end of the roster receivers, right, and so at least one person, is going to miss out on the roster because Tyquan Thornton has to be on the initial 53 in order to
Mhm.
be able to be eligible to come back from IR. Okay. So he's got to get through the 53-man roster. He has to be on the initial 53-man roster in order to be able to come off of IR at some point. And so he's obviously going to be on the initial roster. And so you want him around this year. So he has to get through that 53 cut down. So the question is, of course,
Yeah.
someone's going to get cut, right? And we could talk about the different players that might get cut, but the end of the roster here, we're talking about Trey Nixon. I
Mhm.
mean, come on now. You know how I feel about that. But Christian Wilkerson, and then we could throw a little Jordan Humphrey in there too, but and Josh Hammond, who I think is no shot he makes this team. But nevertheless.
Yeah, I think Hammond has been fine. I think Hammond has been better than some of the last receiver on the roster types they've had in the past.
I agree.
But yeah, I think Wilkerson would probably be the next guy up if healthy. I don't think we know his stats. He hasn't practiced since taking that hit against Carolina, correct?
Right. He has not, no.
Which side did you see that video of the hit he took?
I did not. Was it nasty?
It's worse than it was described. It was dirty. You can see the guy seek him out, go helmet up into the jaw, and then flexing over him. Which, I don't know, somebody leaked what looked like basically all 22 footage from training camp, like a cell phone video of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know who got that out there. Somebody's getting in trouble for that one. But yeah, I think Wilkerson's the guy. And this is also kind of a question of just how many do they want to keep? Do they want to keep anybody from this group?
Right.
Because you get to the last three guys on the roster, and it might not be Nixon versus Wilkerson. It might be one of those guys versus LeBron Ray. Right. And you're keeping one of them. And and it's all right. Yeah. Which one of these guys might give us something on the active roster? Which one of these guys do we think we can't get through to the practice squad? Or just which one do we think has more upside?
Right.
I think it's going to be tough for some of these receivers, especially because they've lasted on the practice squad for so long. I think they can go back there. I don't think they need to keep a massive number of receivers, especially if Thornton will come back in 4 8 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, if Humphrey makes the team, which it seems it's certainly trending in that direction, certainly, right? So let's assume that Humphrey makes the team. If that's the case, now you look at it and say, okay, do I love Wilkerson? Do I have to have him on this team? Yeah, he's okay. But, like, it's not like I have to, I'm missing out, like you mentioned, and we'll talk about a few other guys on the defensive side of the football that, like, you might not be able to cut some of these UDFAs or late round draft picks and get them back. Whereas in other years, you might have been able to. But then you also look at it and say, okay, fine. But, who's going to get these guys, right? Chris Wilkerson, he's probably not going to get claimed. He might, but if he does, he does. Trey Nixon, I love him. I still think that he has potential to be that kind of slot guy. But is he going to get claimed if you cut him? Probably not, right? Probably not. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, maybe he blows up for, 3 touchdowns and 200 yards on tomorrow night. I don't know, right? But, like, chances are he's going to be able to get to the practice squad. So you can keep him on the team if he doesn't make the initial 53, right? And with some of these guys, you can't do. And so that, to me, that's one of those things where, like, I really think that. So we'll start to see kind of what happens there, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Yeah, and obviously I think there's a scenario here where, let's say they like Wilkerson and there's something going on with the injury, he makes the 53 like Thornton and gets put on injured reserve so they can bring him back later if they want to.
Right, and then maybe you turn around and then Trey Nixon gets elevated from the practice squad right away or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, if that's the last guy on your roster and you need another wide receiver,
And if we're talking last guys, somebody put out a roster preview in the last week that talked about cutting Nick Folk and Nick Folk putting him on the practice squad and elevating him like they did at the beginning of last year.
Which
so
they could certainly
essentially
do.
An extra roster spot.
Right. No, it's a good point, right? And because you only have to get through that original 53, right? And so as long as he's on the roster of the first game, his game check is fine. So I think Nick Folk wouldn't be very happy about it if he stayed on the practice squad and then got called up, kind of like he did last year. But if you stick him on the roster on the practice squad now, and you say, look, we're going to bring you right back up. We just need that extra spot, right? I think that's a good idea. So, one last guy is this guy right here, Brian Hoyer. And so, look, I get it. I understand what his contract looks like. I know what's guaranteed. I understand all of that stuff. But, like, I mean, we see what Bailey Zappi can do out there. Like, why do we need Brian Hoyer? Like, we're wasting a roster spot on a backup quarterback, right? Now, does that mean he goes on IR? Like, whatever, dude, make up an injury. Throw him on IR. He guarantees his contract. Like, he doesn't play. He's not going to play anyways. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Does it?
Yeah, and I'm still scarred from, we talked about this last week too, scarred from that Kansas City game. I mean, what Hoyer is supposed to give you is a decent floor, a guy who knows the offense and isn't going to do dumb stuff, although he's not going to push it down the field. And I don't even know if we can trust him to do that. Zappy has
Right.
shown a lot. I think from a pure roster construction perspective, you keep 2 quarterbacks and have it be Mac and Zappy.
Right.
It's only the contract part that gets in the way.
Yeah.
And they have the cap space to absorb that if they want to, especially if they end up dealing away a guy like Isaiah Wynn, which there's rumors swirling
Right.
about. If you free up an extra 10 million, losing 3 to get the extra roster spot with Hoyer is not the end of the world. But
Yeah. And you could also, like I say, I mean, the option might be put him on IR, right? So he's on IR for the year and he's done, so he sticks around, he's around the locker room and everything like that, and you go from there. So, I don't know. So it could end up like, like Malcolm Butler's did, where he goes to IR and then they do a contract buyout, right? They do an injury settlement with him afterwards, right? So it's funny because I wonder how those injury settlements work. Like, can now Butler theoretically could Butler go to another team, and if he passes the physical, like, play? I don't know how that works.
Something like that. I know the settlement has to do with the severity of the injury too, and like how much of the contract they have to buy out, how long he's supposed to be out. Which
right?
What was the injury there?
It was supposedly it was a hip injury, supposedly in the preseason game. That's what the Patriots said.
Which he played 1 full series. I mean, both. It's odd in that I think he, Jawan, and Tyquan Thornton all probably played after whatever their injuries were.
Yeah, it's interesting. So
yeah.
So we'll see. But anyways, all right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. To me, this is where really the meat. Is anyone else on the offensive side you want to talk about? Running backs, I feel like it's pretty clear that if four running backs are going to make the team, right? I feel like JJ's done.
I think there's a chance for 5, depending on if they want to keep both rookies, and if they just think JJ has earned a roster spot. I mean, Taylor over Kevin Harris isn't something crazy. I don't think it'll happen, but I can understand why they would want it. He's an NFL player. You know what you're getting out of him.
Right. I just think too, like, I don't think Harris makes the initial 53, in my opinion. I don't know if he's gonna get claimed by anyone. I think he can sneak onto the practice squad. Now, maybe not, but he hasn't shown a ton. And he had he had a nice explosive run last week, but I don't know. We'll see. And he could be their 5th, or like you say, Taylor could be their 5th too.
I think Harris has actually been better than Strong. It's just part of its draft pedigree too, and it's the type of player with how the offensive line has looked.
Exactly. So that's that bruising guy.
And that's one of those. Again, you're looking at the bottom 3, and it's do they want Kevin Harris or do they want to keep Trey Nixon or Christian Wilkerson? In either scenario, the guy's probably not active on game day either way.
Right. Yep. So we'll see. But all right, defensive side of the football, Cam McGrone, Jelani Tavai. I just like you said it before that, like, somebody said, I think you say Zach Hawks. You thought that that Jelani Tavai is like basically a lock for the roster, and I just don't. I just don't get it. Why in the world would you ever keep? It doesn't make any sense to me. Make it make sense, Matt. Make it make sense, please.
The argument is this. For the first time in a long time, the Patriots are actually light at linebacker. Outside of Bentley, all these guys are smaller than who they usually put out there. And if you want to have one other linebacker with any size who's very physical downhill, has good instincts, can play off the line of scrimmage, Tavai is your guy. Problem is, he's probably getting 5 or 10 snaps a game max on defense. Most of those are going to be short yardage situations. Especially if you're playing if he's playing a lot when they go down to Miami week 1, if he makes the roster,
50.
Something's off, because you can't have Bentley and Tavai in the middle of the field with those receivers running crossers and Gesicki going up the seam. You're going to get absolutely torn apart. He has value. He does play a lot of special teams. I will give Tavai that. He's good there. And the other thing that would give Tavai the upper hand in this is McGrone is still more of an unknown, and they can probably put him on the practice squad. They could probably put either of them there, to be fair. But that is my argument in favor of Tavai. I would keep McGrone. Honestly, I would be okay with keeping neither of them too.
I was gonna say I would rather keep neither of them than Tavai. If you make me choose, you can keep McGrone, but you can keep Tavai or you can keep neither. I'd be like, no. I don't. You can't cut them both. Like McGrone's been fine, but he's an unknown, and you could theoretically sneak him on. Now maybe you can't sneak him on the practice squad, but I think you could sneak him onto that practice squad because you haven't really seen anything from him, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Will say, I think in the
Terence
last
McKinney.
preseason game we saw a little bit more from him late. I thought he made 1 or 2 plays
Yeah,
later in that game. So I mean, this guy still hasn't played a lot of football in a long time. I
right.
think he's still finding his groove again. So that's, I mean, you want to talk about the preseason game. This is one of those battles where they're both going to get playing time
Yes.
and both going to play the same position. This is one of those where this game could determine which one of them, if either of them makes the roster.
Yeah, I agree. And that's going to be it's a good point. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. All right, let's go to the defensive line, and I kind of threw a third guy on here as well.
Yeah.
But Henry Anderson, LeBrian Ray, who you mentioned, and DeMarcus Mitchell. Now the other guy that isn't on here is Sam Roberts. He's another young guy, right? Now he's not a UDFA as Ray and Mitchell are, but a 6th-round draft pick from D2. Those three guys give you so much upside. I think we've seen a lot from them. Of course, Mitchell has the strip sack in the end zone to end the game. Sam Roberts recovers the fumble. LeBrian Ray has given you the least upside as far as rushing the passer, but he's been very good against the run, and he's played all over the line, whether it was head up on the nose or the 3 technique or the 5 technique. Like he's done everything, and so I've been very impressed.
And I think we've heard good things about Ray from camp too that we maybe haven't seen in the preseason games, but are probably still impressing the coaches.
Right.
Honestly, I don't. Anderson hasn't been a flashy player, but I think he's been solid. I don't know how much playing time he would see. I don't know if he'd make the active roster, game day roster, but he's a solid run defender. And I think you could also throw one more guy on here, and that's Lawrence Guy. And you might have 5 guys here vying for 2, maybe 3 roster spots. And the safe option is you keep Guy and Anderson, 2 veterans who you kind of know what you're getting, and maybe take one of the others. But I think DeMarcus Mitchell is interesting as a pass rusher. He plays a lot of special teams for them, which could be his ticket to getting on. I mean, Henry Anderson is probably a better player than DeMarcus Mitchell, but he does everything Dietrich Wise does a little bit worse, and he doesn't pack that same power as a pass rusher. And you're not going to get that impact from him on special teams. DeMarcus Mitchell, you know that he'll actually be on the game day roster and make some kind of an impact. So,
right, that's a good point.
Yeah, and a Ray with versatility, I mean, you got 3 young guys with upside and versatility, and 2 guys where you know what you're getting in the veterans, and
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. The Patriots are having this problem that they've had in the past, where you have a plethora of young talent. That's a good word, plethora. A plethora of young talent at a position, and now you're looking at it, saying, okay, well, do we cut Ray? Do we cut Roberts? Do we cut Mitchell? And Team Crazy Matt talked about Carl Davis. Do we cut Carl Davis? Do we cut Henry Anderson?
Yeah, it's another.
Do we cut Lawrence Guy? Like, these are the questions that you have to figure out. And you have a ton of talent there, right? And so, not to mention, we're not even talking about Christian Barmore because he's, clearly going to be on the roster. But like, you're talking about the young talent that you have along the defensive line, and it's big. There's a ton of it there, right? And so, not to mention, Penny Jennings has shown up, and I know he's been a little bit more of a linebacker, but he's played well on the edge too. So it's like these kind of front 7 players, you went from having no depth to having a ton of depth, right? And so it is going to be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. I have no idea how the hell they're going to do it. I think they might just keep all of them, to be honest with you. Like, it's just, how the hell do you get rid of these guys?
Yeah, and I think your 3 starters are Wise, Godshaw, and Barmore.
Right.
Behind that, who knows what they're going to do? They also played for the first time in a while. We saw them play 3 defensive linemen with 4 linebackers starting off that last preseason game. If you're only going to play 3 defensive linemen, maybe they're just going to keep less of these guys and they're going to keep more of these linebackers. Maybe they keep McGrone and Tavai, and they end up cutting a lot of these guys we're talking about right now because they think we're going to play more linebackers this year and you can do more with them. I have no idea. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. It is an area where I trust Belichick. Might be the area where I trust Belichick the most to make his evaluations.
Me too, but I would freaking hate that, dude. I would hate that so much. Jelani Tavai over, whether it be DeMarcus Mitchell or Sam Roberts or even LeBron Ray. It's like, man, come on, dude. What are we doing here? But,
Yeah. It's one of those. I wish we had all 22 film access for the preseason. You can't even do like defensive line too is so tough to do from the television angle to figure out what's going
but
on.
You see some of the explosion, and it's against lesser competition. I get that, but like you see some of the explosion and some of the get off and some of the moves that you see from these guys. You're like, man, these guys are good. They can get there.
The whole group dominated Carolina's backups.
Yeah,
all through the whole second half, and it's just, I mean, I feel like you have to keep at least one of the young guys.
Right. You got to, because you can't have that much depth at a position and young depth at that, and then lose it all. You can't. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm hoping that a few of them make the roster. But we'll see. So
and hey, they're gonna have opportunities. I mean, these guys are probably gonna be playing a lot tomorrow night, which means
that's very true.
One of them has a good game. One of them makes a splash play. If you see somebody force another fumble, that could be the difference between being on the roster and not.
That's true. Very true. All right. Last one. We said the best one for last. I think the most intriguing one, maybe not the most intriguing one, but one that I like a lot. Terence Mitchell, Shaun Wade. Of course, Shaun Wade was a rookie last year. They traded to Baltimore. He never played. Traded him from Baltimore, I'm sure, or acquired him from Baltimore. And then Mitchell, has been around the league a while. Free agent signing, and everyone kind of poo-pooed right away when they signed him. And then he got on the field, and people were like, "Oh, this kid's pretty good." And now it kind of seems like this is the positional battle, right? Because you got the people in front of them, right? Jalen Mills is there, Marcus Jones is there, Jack Jones is there, right? Jonathan Jones is there. So now you're looking at it. Are you going to keep 6 corners? Like probably not, right? Because there's no one else there. I'm not forgetting anyone, right?
Well, there's Justin Bethel if you're counting him as a corner.
Get the hell out of here. We have to stop with this, anyways. I'll get off my soapbox, but I can't stand it when we have like Justin Bethel's fine, but like, and he's elite, so that's fine. But like him and Slater are your special teams guys. Don't be keeping Cody Davis. Don't be keeping. You don't need 12 special teams guys.
We got to keep Brendan Schooler. He's a lock.
Yes. Okay. Fine. But he's the other one. So Cody Davis comes out. Schooler goes in because he takes that role basically, right? He becomes that 6th safety on the roster who's really just a special teams guy, right? Fine. That's fine. At least he's young. And so maybe he'll somehow turn into an actual defensive player as well. But nevertheless. So then, okay, you got those 4, and now it's between Wade and Mitchell for your 5th corner, right? And I think this is an intriguing battle. I think Shaun Wade's played really well, with limited time. I think he's played pretty well. And so, but Mitchell's played well too. Like, so then it's like, now, how do you choose between the two? It's going to be very interesting to see where they go here.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm old enough to remember when we were talking about Terence Mitchell versus Malcolm Butler as the outside corners at one point in camp, before back when Mills was still injured. It seems like a lot has changed since then. Mitchell, I think, he gives you upside. I really like him as a run defender. He's got that peanut punch, a little bit of that Charles Tillman in him when he's going after the ball, which is valuable. But I think Shaun Wade gives you more upside. He's got a little bit of a ball hawk in him. Unfortunately, that also happens on special teams where he's running into his own guys. So you got to clean that up.
Not great.
Yeah, and that's where you talk about special teamers only. This is where this roster can get more versatile, as if some of these bottom of the roster guys can contribute there. I wouldn't be surprised to see them keep Wade over Mitchell because they think he can give them more on special teams. I know they didn't like the way the unit performed last year. They lost Brandon King. They lost Brandon Bolden. Both Brandons that played special teams last year. So you got an opportunity to kind of refresh some of those guys, get some new blood in there. I'm taking Wade in this one. As of right now, with everything we've seen, I would take Shaun Wade. And I liked him coming out of college too. He was a guy. I went back recently on the Draft Network. I was doing mock drafts the year he came out. And my first mock in September or October or whatever, way before the draft, I had Pats taking Shaun Wade in like the first round. Yeah, that's where his stock was at that point.
Yeah, it was. He was one of the best corners in the league, and then he had a rough final year. I don't know if it was junior year or senior year, but
they switched him from a slot corner to an outside corner, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, 100%.
couldn't adjust. But then he played the preseason with Baltimore, and according to PFF, was the best corner in the NFL during the preseason, playing outside. He's played outside New England. It seems like Ohio State shifted him. It took him a little bit to figure it out, and now he's starting to figure it out. I don't know if he'll be a lockdown guy, but he and Jack Jones as your depth option seem like pretty good ball hawks to have as backups.
Yep, I agree. If it matters to anyone, my dad is texting me now saying that it's Mitchell with Wade on the practice squad. I don't know if Wade makes the practice squad, to be honest with you. And I think, someone mentioned it earlier, like Cravon LeBlanc is a guy that was a UDFA for the Patriots, played well in the preseason, had that ridiculous one-handed backhand interception in the end zone, and they tried to sneak him on the practice squad and he got claimed by the Bears and ended up starting for the Bears. And, he flamed out. He only played a few years, but still he was a contributor and a starter for the Bears that year as a rookie, and for like 2 or 3 years. So,
do you know where Cravon Blanc was most recently?
In New England.
No, he was with the Raiders. He got cut by the Raiders the same day they cut Kenyon Drake, right before joint practices.
You're right, but didn't the Patriots bring him back in? I think the Patriots brought him back in too and cut him. Maybe. I think they brought him in for like for spring practices or something like that. But anyways, regardless, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I think the special teams thing is true because they need guys that can do both. Yes, you can be a contributor. Can you also contribute on special teams, right? And Team Crazy Matt mentioned him, and I left him off the list, and I shouldn't have. But Miles Bryant has been a guy that has been willing to do everything. He's been back returning punts, and look, the last time you guys saw him, he was getting smoked over the field by Isaiah McKenzie. He can't do that. He can't cover Isaiah McKenzie one-on-one. We can't ask him to do that. He just can't. But he's a decent slot corner. He's decent. He's not great, but he's not bad. And so he's a guy that, and if he's willing to do whatever and play special team stuff, he's a guy that has a shot to make the roster too.
Yeah, he's a lot of that in Buffalo too was a scheme issue and not so much Bryant. He's a fine player. According to everybody, he was repping with the ones this week in joint practices. It seems like the starting unit they're going to go with is Jonathan Jones, Miles Bryant, and Jalen Mills, which I have question marks about, but you can do worse as a secondary.
Right.
Which I think it says a lot that a week ago we were talking about, is Marcus Jones on the roster? And ever since Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant's been repping with the ones ever since we had that conversation.
Well, which is fascinating because, Marcus Jones, you kind of said it almost mistakenly, but Marcus Jones is a guy who didn't play in the first preseason game, was repping with the ones basically since the spring. And now all of a sudden it seems like he's been leapfrogged by Miles Bryant. And it hasn't, at least from what I've heard in teams, 11 on 11 and 7 on 7, it's not like Bryant's outplaying Jones significantly. I don't really know what happened. All of a sudden, Marcus Jones isn't returning punts for you. Miles Bryant is. Marcus Jones is in the slot. Miles Bryant is. It's just kind of it's just strange. It just came out of nowhere. And it was one of those things that he went from being such a lock for a starter that he didn't play in the first preseason game to then he was playing in the third and fourth quarter in the second preseason game. And he's repping with the backups. It's very strange.
And the other thing that's totally possible in all of this is that Tavai and Bryant, who have been repping with the ones for the past 2 weeks, are getting those looks because Bill wants to see what they have in joint practices. He wants to put them in these looks, and he's going to figure out after the fact if they're going to make the roster. He could be in that position because he is on the bubble, and Marcus Jones could be where he is because he is that safe and he's been playing that well.
Yeah.
Also,
and that's very possible too. Yeah.
Corners take time to adjust too. So Marcus Jones being your fourth corner and your backup slot guy, he's still going to get a lot of playing time in that role.
Very true. Yep, very true. No, it's a good point. It's a good point. And the other thing too is that a guy like Tavai and a guy like Bryant could be guys that they trade, right? They could be, hey, we're going to cut this guy. Do you want him? Hey, look how well he played in the preseason. He can return punts. He can, he's a good slot corner. So that's also a possibility as well. Of course, if you're showcasing Jelani Tavai, it's not a great idea to leave him one-on-one against a tight end to give up a 40-yard pass. But what are you going to do?
And we'll see what happens if the starters end up playing. One of the things, I don't know how much you want to talk about the matchups of this game, but if they're playing starters, what happens with Darren Waller? How do the Pats attack that, especially with the matchup they're going to have week 1 with Gesicki?
Yep.
And they could have Duggar on them. I actually saw an interview that Waller did recently, where he was asked how he thought he would do, or like he was asked if there's any linebacker he's ever gone up against in the NFL where he's like, this is a good dude. This is a guy who can cover me. And he said no. He said he hasn't gone against a linebacker in coverage in years. So if they're putting Devy on him, something's wrong.
Yeah. No, I mean,
they're
Jesus
also playing
Christ,
the Raiders this season, so I don't think we're going to see anything schematically.
I would agree with that. No, I would agree with that
100%.
You're not going to kind of tip your hand. And look, I mean, just to get into the game a little bit, we don't want to talk about it too much because it's a preseason game, so like you don't really care about too much of it. But I will say, joint practices, they got smoked, right? They got smoked in one-on-ones. You can't cover. They couldn't cover Devontae Adams. They couldn't cover Hunter Renfrow. They couldn't cover Darren Waller. Like, yeah, you think? Like, it doesn't matter who they freaking play. You can't, like, who the hell, what corner in the league can stick with Devontae Adams one-on-one? It's just like, that doesn't happen.
In a practice drill, too, where you don't have to worry about situations and you don't have to worry about pass rush on the quarterback.
Exactly.
You don't have a tell on what he's going to do based on scheme. It's just pure route running. I mean, there might be five corners in the NFL who could go 50-50 consistently with Devontae Adams in that position.
Right. And so that's kind of the thing for me. And look, I'll tell you what, man. I tweeted this out today, but okay, we all know N'Keal Harry, terrible pick. We all know this. We all know it was bad, right? And everyone talks about A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel. And listen, rightfully so. I'm not saying that any of those people are wrong. I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm not saying that at all. Mm-hmm. However, what I am saying is that is not where they missed out the most. Okay. And let me just read this to you because it's sickening, really, when you look at it. Hunter Renfrow was drafted in the 5th round in 2019. The 5th round in 2019. The players that the Patriots selected. Oh, by the way, Hunter Renfrow, if you were to go into a science laboratory and build a wide receiver for the New England Patriots, it would be Hunter Renfrow. Like it would be.
If you told me that Hunter Renfrow was playing in Boston, I would not have thought it was the outfielder.
Right, exactly, right? So anyway, so the players they drafted instead of drafting Hunter Renfrow, N'Keal Harry, Joejuan Williams, Chase Winovich, Damian Harris. Okay. Still Harris. Not, but okay. Yodnik Adjust, Jalte Froholt, and Jarrett Stidham.
Yelda Froholt. I had to learn that pronunciation.
Yelda?
Yelda Froholt.
Damn. Little Zelda going on over there. Nevertheless.
Yeah, no, it's a who's who of guys you don't want to draft.
I mean, that's 7. They had 7 chances, and they didn't take him. And it's like, he's the guy. And I get Edelman was still on the team. I get that. But, like, what the hell are we doing? That's the guy. That's the guy. He plays the position. He's the guy. Like, and it's, I understand, like, you can't just fit a guy in there. And it's funny. That was, like, my argument against Mac Jones last year was, like, okay, you have Brady. Now you're just going to replace him with Brady, but like a lesser version of Brady. That guy could never be Brady. Like, and he's not going to be Brady. Don't get me wrong. But like, it's like, okay, we have Edelman. We can't just replace him with Edelman. Like, okay, fine. But like, the guy runs sickening. His route running is sickening. Like he has that quickness that Edelman and Welker and those guys had, where he just breaks off those routes instantaneously, and he's all of a sudden he's going in the other direction, and the D-back's like, what? How did he get over there? And so like that, it's so frustrating because that's the exact type of guy. And like to draft him in the 4th round, I don't, oh God, it makes me sick. Like thinking about it, I'm like, oh my, I like realized last night that he was drafted in the 5th round of 2019. And I was like, oh my God, that draft was so bad. And I'm like looking back and I'm like, oh my God, it's so bad. And it's just like,
and it's the first, and you can go back and redo that draft so many different ways. I will say, at least they got Jacoby Myers, who was undrafted.
That's very true.
Which is, to this day, one thing that still shocks me. I watched his tape and I was like, this is a 5th rounder. This is a guy who should be able to step in right away and be a decent player. He might never be anything more than a 3rd receiver, but he clearly can play the position.
Right, 100%.
For him to go undrafted, to me, was a shock. And once we picked him up, that was like, all right, well, this guy's gonna make the team.
Correct.
But
correct.
But the rest of that is Yeah.
So, but
Renfro, yeah, everything about Renfro screams Pats. I mean, we'll see how they defend them if they play this time. How these guys are able to handle this position and kind of
yeah,
not one-on-ones. We saw Jalen Mills did get a PBU against Devontae Adams one-on-one.
yeah. So she tweeted that. I actually just saw that.
Yeah,
So
so that's something. It's
yeah, it
more than
is.
you or I could get.
Yeah, I'd say so. Look at this. Look at the random trivia by Team Crazy Matt. Jacoby Myers is the first player wearing number 16 to catch a pass from Tom Brady. Look at that. Look at that. All the years Tom Brady played, no receiver ever wore 16. That's fascinating. By the way, just
I'm trying to think of who did wear 16 for the Pats.
Scott Zolak. Other than Zolak, I don't know if anyone wore 16.
I'm gonna have to do a little research here while you talk then. And
By
see
the
what you
way,
got.
that is not. I don't know for sure that that's true, but I'm just trusting Team Crazy Matt that he understands and knows that's true.
I believe it.
So, all right, someone just tweeted this out, and I don't want to get too far into it. I'm not going to do it, but I will say, Kamar Aiken, maybe you might be right. Kamar Aiken never had to catch New England. There you go. This Tim Graham guy, I don't know who he is, but Tim Graham it looks like he is a some sort of reporter from Buffalo, 41,000 followers. He's verified. Source tells me the Bills were made aware of the accusations against Matt Ariza last month.
Yeah.
They did not know when they drafted him, but they did know when they cut Matt Hack on Monday. Ariza traveled with the team to Carolina and is expected to play tomorrow night.
No.
Yikes.
Yeah. I will, for the moment, I will give until we know more, I'll give the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they were told and they had some, in their eyes, valid reason to believe that it wasn't true. But given what we've seen unfold in Cleveland, right in another Great Lake over there,
Yep.
it's hard to believe anything other than, well, he's good at football and we thought we weren't going to get caught.
Yeah. It's just,
yeah.
Man.
What's the quote that Haslam had about Deshaun Watson? He's 25 or he's 26 and he's a good football player.
He's 25 and he's a great quarterback. And it's like, man, you just
neither of those was ever in dispute here.
It was not. No, it was not. No one's asking for his birth certificate. Nobody says he's not good at football. It's just like
Deshaun
we just
Watson
kind of
had
don't
a different age. It wouldn't change anything about it.
It certainly wouldn't. The only difference is that, and this is what I said all along. You know, when you look at someone like Ray Rice, and then you look at someone like Kareem Hunt, the only reason Ray Rice isn't in the league and Kareem Hunt is in the league is because Ray Rice couldn't play anymore. That simple. Ray Rice was breaking down.
And he went against the owners at one point.
That's very true. But also, I think the biggest reason for me is because he couldn't play anymore. He was fine, but he wasn't a game-breaking player, whereas Kareem Hunt is. And so we say, okay, sure, we'll take a chance on him. Is it?
The same thing probably goes for Colin Kaepernick too.
Yep.
By the time things get resolved, the guy's old enough that you can say, well, he's not that good. He's not worth taking the risk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, was he benched for Blaine Gabbert? Like, maybe he's not the guy. So
which
it's just
I would not be shocked if things change between now and the game tomorrow for the Bills. Now that this is a lawsuit filed publicly and all of that, and there's a PR aspect to it,
certainly possible.
And I look at like the way the Pats handled the Aaron Hernandez situation was the allegations came out and they said, once we know more, we'll do something. It took them 3 days to learn more facts of the case, and gone.
And then they cut him. Yeah. So, but we'll see. Anyways, that's the darker side of football. But man, it's tough, and that happens. The hard thing is that we know that happens. You know what happens. You know it gets shoved under the rug, and it's like that's the stuff that drives you crazy because you're like, man, you just can't. It's just, it makes me sick. But
I saw some stat earlier about how I think 16% of students at San Diego State said that they have been sexually harassed or assaulted.
Yeah, I'm surprised that number's so low. To be completely honest with you, because this is what happens, and then it gets swept under the rug, and there's no proof, and then it turns into, and I don't even want to go down this road, but it turns into a he said she said, and then you're one of those things that like, oh, well, did it happen? Did it not happen? Do we know if it happened? Then it's like, and then someone saw it, but then they won't say anything if they saw it, and then it just ends up going away, right? And so it's like that's the hard part, you know.
Yeah, I will say with the facts of this case that have come out so far, seems like the woman that came forward got a rape kit done immediately
Yep.
and went to the police immediately. Things are documented. They have phone calls with all of the alleged not victims, people who allegedly did this,
Right.
and they collected a lot of evidence from the start. I don't know
Right.
where the police investigation is. I'm not going to comment on anything like that, but I
No, of
think
course, but
that we should have a lot more information than a he said, she said in this
I
case,
agree.
which is just that's always good.
Right.
The more
100%.
information you have, the better.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
So
Going back to a lighter note here, I
Yeah.
have the list of all the players that have worn 16 in
let's
New
see.
England.
Let's get it.
There are only 5 of them,
Oh, baby.
and we've already named 3 in Jacoby Myers, Scott Zolak, and Kamar Aiken. You should be able to, the other 2 are both quarterbacks. I want to see if you can guess who they are.
Oh, both quarterbacks. Did Damon Hewitt wear 16? No, he wore 10.
No, he was 19.
19. Quarterbacks. Oh my God. The problem is like they've had a billion quarterbacks. When do they play?
One of them played in the 70s.
Oh, you mean like forever? Oh, Jim Plunkett was 16. Team Crazy Man said that.
But the other one's recent.
The other one's recent.
It's in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Which I completely forgot. I couldn't have pictured. I could not.
Was it Vinny? Was it Vinny T?
No.
Oh, Vinny T. Dang it. No, Jacoby Biscuits. Well, it definitely wasn't. Was it Brissett? Was it? It wasn't Brissett. He was 7. Someone guessed Ryan Mallett. Here,
I'll give you this. He started 15 games in New England in the 2000s.
What? Oh, so Matt Castleton. So Matt Castleton. Okay. Oh, Team Crazy Man had that one too. That it was Matt Castleton.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay.
So I would assume that means Jacoby Myers is the only 16 to ever catch a touchdown in New England, unless Plunkett did it at some point. Or Zolak.
You never know. Yeah, it's interesting. He almost didn't either. Jacoby. So, that's very interesting. That's a great piece of trivia right there. I like that. I mean, think about all the years that Brady played, and to have one guy catch a pass from wearing 16. Now, I don't know if he's had anyone. I don't know if he's had anyone in Tampa or not, but it would be fascinating if Jacoby was the only player who wore 16 to catch a pass from him. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be like it's like such a weird random stat, but it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I do know there's somebody on.
Dang it, Brashard Perryman.
Oh,
Team Crazy Matt's just like he's our fat guy.
We got a Matt coming for my job here. Matt on Matt violence.
Oh, first touchdown to a guy wearing number 16. That's right, because Jacoby didn't catch touchdown pass till it was Cam Newton.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I totally lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes. Sometimes that's what happens.
I'm sure I'm gonna remember it immediately after this and message you.
100%. That's okay. That's all right. We can talk about it tomorrow on our tomorrow night. Just in case you guys are wondering, tomorrow night or tonight, if you're listening in podcast form, we will have an instant reaction to the game on Friday night. So
I remember what I was going to say. There's a Reddit user who put together a compilation of Tom Brady's first touchdown pass to every player he's ever thrown a touchdown pass to.
That's so good.
Which has a couple real grainy videos.
Sure.
There's one of some tight end in 06 against Jacksonville, I think, was one of them, where there isn't even full footage of that game available on the internet. They found the clip somewhere. And which I don't know the last time this video was updated. The last time I saw it was when Brady was still in New England. I'll have to see if I can find that somewhere. But
unbelievable. That's fantastic right there. David Thomas, Team Crazy Man. Bro, I don't know why. This man, dude, I'm not entirely convinced it's not you over there texting on Twitch.
See me typing away.
So, and I've been corrected that Jacoby Myers' first touchdown was not from Cam Newton, but actually from Brian Hoyer, which is factual.
In the Cleveland game.
In the Cleveland game, yes. Nevertheless, so Oh, apparently he keeps a spreadsheet with info about all of the Brady TD receivers. I mean, you need people like this in your life. This is why we do
This
this
is
with
amazing.
the comments on, because we need people like, and
I
he is
appreciate
actually
the
crazy. We need
dedication.
it. Yep, we do.
If you got a link to this document, I'd love to see it.
I know, right? I know. So, anyways, I think that's it. I think that's all we got. Nothing
Yeah.
else. Listen. The game's gonna be
Offensive
interesting
line
tomorrow
playing,
night,
but there's not much we can do with that from
and
here.
I mean, honestly, it's like at this point, yeah, okay, we know who the starters are going to be. Obviously, there's a question. I guess we can, you mentioned it a little bit. Isaiah Wynn, will he get traded? Will he not get traded? He hasn't played in 2 weeks, so like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's not healthy. I mean, obviously he's not healthy right now, but what's his availability going to be like for the season? Is he going to get moved? Are they not playing him because they're trying to trade him? Like, nobody knows any of this stuff, right? And Justin Herron is not the answer at right tackle, right? Justice playing fine, but it's hard. So,
I think we're
you know,
gonna have question marks there even after the preseason game and
right?
probably after cuts too. So
Yeah, I think so too. I will say I liked what I've seen from Chase and Hines so far. I think he's a pretty good player, and the backup center, what the hell's his name?
Cody
Rusty. Yeah. Thank you.
Mike Reese had good things to say about him and William Sherman, for
Yeah.
the guy we drafted from Colorado last year.
Right. And so, those are the things that I've seen. So, we'll see. But that's what we got. Oh, Team Crazy Man's trying to drop his link in the Twitch chat. I don't know if I can't. I won't be able to click to it. Send me
my DM. Yeah, my DMs are open. Send it to me.
Yep, mine as well if you're on Twitter.
I got my handle right up there. Send that over and I'll look at it.
Yeah,
retweet it for you. I'll give you a shout out.
Yeah. See, that's the type of stuff we like around here. So, but anyways, the offensive line's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, at this point, we don't even know who the backups are gonna be. I hope it's not gonna be James Ferentz. It's not gonna be Drew Desjardins or whatever his last name is.
CFL
that guy
guy.
stinks. And so you kind of have the idea of who it isn't going to be. We're just not really sure who it is going to be. So that's going to be
looking for someone. Yeah, we need somebody to start winning some of these jobs, which will happen tomorrow night. And
you think so? You would think so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's after this week. There's nothing open to the media for practice, right?
Nothing. Everything's closed. No.
Yeah, which is probably when Bill's he's gonna start making his real decisions then.
Right. Yeah, and that's when you'll see like when the ones play with the ones. That's when it will be right. If Marcus Jones is a starting slot corner, that's when it'll start being starting slot corner. Is when there's no media there. So we'll see what happens. But
yeah.
Anyways, that does it for us. Enjoy the game Friday night. We'll be with you Friday night after the game to do an instant reaction like we have been on all the preseason games, and hopefully that will continue throughout the season. We got to work out some of the logistics with the rest of the podcasters on the team, but that's the plan, at least for now. Certainly the away games, home games are tough because I'm at the home games, but certainly the away games we'll be trying to do that. So, anyways, thanks for listening. For me and my now permanent co-host Matt St. Jean, have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.